What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. We're talking all things SEC with our buddy Jake Crain of Crain and Company. Who does he think is overrated and underrated this year in the SEC? We'll put him on the hot seat. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150. Any winning $5 bet over there. FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. He is Jake Crain, host of Crain and Company over at the Daily Wire, former coach who covers all things college football, everything in the sporting world. And we always love to get his perspective because he's really smart and he knows his stuff. Jake, welcome in, man. How are you?
Gordy, I appreciate that. Yeah, I really only know four things and they all start with F, and football is one of them. I'll let you guess the other three.
Faith. I know that's one.
Yeah, well, that's actually five things.
There you go. It's always good to talk with you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you out at SEC Media Days here in a couple of weeks. Going to be here before we know it. But want to start with some big picture stuff first. One of the big stories come out in the sports world yesterday. We got news. ESPN is indeed going to sublicense some of the college football playoff games starting this coming season. TNT is going to televise 2 of the first round games of the playoff, and that'll run for 5 years. And then in addition, they're going to get 2 second round games starting in 2026. We know ESPN paid a king's ransom for the rights to broadcast these games and put that caveat in there that they could sublease some of these games. You have thoughts on TNT Sports going to be carrying some of these big playoff games?
Man, it's going to be like watching the college basketball tournament. I mean, what's next? True TV? Am I going to be watching like the second round game on, right after, some new Sherlock Holmes series or something? No, look, as long as I can get the game, at the end of the day, I'll take that. But I'm wondering, from a commentator standpoint, how this is going to work. I wish they'd keep some sort of like inside the NBA, but keep if you could keep Charles Barkley on there if you wanted to, honestly. But look, I'm excited about the new playoff. They're going to find a way to make as much money and squeeze as much juice out of the lemon as possible. Subleasing, something you paid a lot for, or sublicensing, something you paid a lot for. I get it. Right. I get it. So no, I'm excited just for the whole thing in general. So I'm just glad it's going to be on TV. I don't have to download Peacock or somehow get some mixture of Amazon and Hulu and a little bit of Netflix. At least it's on, I guess you could say cable per se.
Yeah, this is like buying your dream home that has a guest house and then immediately renting out the guest house. How about you?
Yeah. That's exactly what it's like. They're going to try and make as much money as humanly possible. It's going to be interesting for sure.
You mentioned something though, in joking. I mean, I was going to bring this up. Like TNT, one of the biggest storylines in the NBA is that after next season, they're giving up the NBA. They're going to move over to NBC, but they do have Barkley and Shaq and all those guys under contract. Like, who is Turner going to put in these games? I would love to see a studio show for the playoffs with Shaq and Barkley in there.
It would be must-see TV. I mean, just let them talk trash to each other the whole time. No, that's why I brought it up. That's the most interesting part of this deal to me. Isn't just that it's on TNT, but you have, as you said, the Inside the NBA moving. Those guys are moving that show over to NBC. Kind of who they're going to get to fill that void, because it's a tough follow. If you're not going to keep Chuck and Shaq there, that's a real tough follow. You better be pretty good. I'll do it.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if Turner's looking for some, broadcasters, we'll put our names in the hat if they're looking
for sure. I won't tell you no. Don't tempt me with a good time.
Now, keep in mind, these are first round playoff games. So this could be like Penn State versus Utah or something. So it might not be a sexy matchup, but
look, and it's going to be on campus. Sign me up for that. That's the part. I want to see some of these atmospheres. That's what's going to be wild. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine a whiteout in a playoff game in college football? I've been about as nuts atmospheres as there have been. And I just think there's no way they could take this up to another notch. I mean, you imagine an SEC team hosting a playoff game in football like that. I mean, it'll be a almost religious experience.
I mean, it's going to happen because we keep saying 10-2 is the bar to get in. And let's just say you got 2 11-1 teams playing in the SEC championship game. Well, the winner's in, the loser's probably still in as an at-large. And then you probably have another 10-2 or 2 10-2 teams that are going to get into. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is this is Lane Kiffin territory right here. Like, this is Ole Miss. If they're not in Atlanta, they're 10-2 and they're getting in at large and they're playing that first weekend, possibly on TNT Sports. So it's going to be very interesting. Talking with Jake Crain, one of the biggest stories in the sports world this week, Jake, Georgia quarterback Jaden Rashada filing a lawsuit against Florida head coach Billy Napier and others for failing to come through with their NIL agreement that they had signed. Where are you on this whole situation?
Well, like, here's the truth, in my opinion, is that when you let NIL out with no rules and guidelines, really, and you had these, faux rules, as I call them, now that you did that, we're going to have to build this parachute on the way down. So I almost think this is a necessity. Like, problems have to arise so we can set some sort of precedent. So moving forward, whenever the Power Five splits and we have this commission or panel or delegation or whatever it's going to be, you have some precedent you can look back on and say, we need a rule for this. We need a rule for that. It's like when they were making the Constitution. I mean, people would bring up rules and then you bring up problems to those rules and then you iron this whole thing out. Maybe this is how we have to mold the ball of clay now, because without it, there is no other way to mold it, because they didn't put guardrails on this thing. Just like with the transfer portal, they just let the monster out on the villagers and then looked around all surprised when it started ripping the villagers apart. So I think this is one of the many problems that is almost a necessity so we can get this thing somewhat buttoned up down the road.
Yeah, and it feels like, I mean, we're heading down this road where there's going to be settlements, and it looks like we're going to be heading towards that world where the school can take football revenue and basically have a salary cap where they can themselves pay players on top of NIL. Like, NIL is still going to exist, so it does seem like maybe it gets a little bit clearer if the schools are going to be directly paying these kids sometime.
Well, that too, and whatever body or entity becomes on this Power 5 breakoff, I think what you're going to have happen is on that NLI, if you want to play for Florida or Auburn or Georgia, you want to play in this Power 5 league, when you sign that, you are agreeing to the rules that this new entity creates. Therefore, it takes all, oh, I didn't know, or oh, this isn't fair out of it. Not to say people won't test it. They've been testing it since the beginning of time. That's how human beings are. But I do want to make this point. No high school player, not transfer portal player, not Cam Newton deciding to come back in 2011, is worth $13 million. That was a ridiculous amount of money, especially in the sport of football. Maybe, once, you have LeBron decide to go to college, he'd be worth $13 million. But in the sport of football, the ultimate team sport, offering a player almost $14 million, I don't care if it's over a 4-year span or a 1-year span, is absolutely asinine. Everybody looks bad in this situation. And if you're Florida, it does hurt your street rep in recruiting, and it will be used against you, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, we knew the nut job down in Miami, the big booster. He was, well, they put $9 million on the line, and we knew he was good for it. He was going to pay it. This almost feels like the Florida booster, was at happy hour having some drinks, was like, screw it, I'll go $13 million. And afterwards, oh my God, what did we do here? And maybe that's why they never gave the payments to Rashada, because they were like, this is a lot of money. What are we doing here? But to your point, a guy who's established, if Vince Young had come out and said, I'll come back for another year at Texas after the championship, that's worth $13 million.
I get that. Johnny Manziel
exactly.
decides I want to come back. I get that. But not, again, why do you think in the NFL, the second contract is worth so much more than the first one? Because you're a proven commodity. A draft pick is a projection. A high school player coming out is a projection. That's why I can understand if you're like, all right, Cam Ward wants $1.5 million. Well, that's worth it because I know what Cam Ward can do at this level. I don't know about Walker White yet, or Arch Manning yet, or some of these other guys, but almost $14 million? Y'all have lost y'all's mind doing that. No wonder you didn't pay it.
All right, we're going to talk some SEC specific stuff with Jake Crain here coming up here on Locked On SEC. More with Jake Crain here in just a second, but first we want to remind you guys about our friends over at Yahoo Finance. Look, wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investment retirement accounts in one place? Well, with Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend your entire portfolio with confidence. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance, they've been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news and much more. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. And with a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, you need to go visit the brand behind every great investor, and that is yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That, again, is yahoofinance.com. Continue our conversation with Jake Crain of Crain and Company. And Jake, as we get closer, look, it's almost June. The calendar is almost turned, and so we know we're getting ever so closer to another college football season. So I want to start here because I've been asked a lot about teams pre-spring, post-spring, all the transfer portal acquisitions and all this. Give me a team in the SEC you think is maybe a little bit underrated that we're not talking about enough right now.
Well, and it's somebody that it's really the only team, one of three teams that we talked about for the last couple of years, and you haven't really heard a lot, and that's Texas A&M, and it's Mike Elko, and it's by design. See, not saying that A&M is going to come out and win 10 games, but I think Mike Elko, again, a guy that is speaking of proven commodities, shown what he can do at Duke. This isn't like Sam Pittman going to Arkansas and we think we know. We know what Mike Elko can do as a head coach, and he has experience, but he goes about it in a much different way. There's no rebutting back to Nick Saban. There's no prima donna drama that's going on because you've accumulated all these guys and sacrificed your culture in the process. You know what they're focused on? Blocking and tackling, Gordy. That's what they're focused on. Getting the most out of each player. Because, look, that's who Texas A&M really is. And it's not like Texas A&M has a ton of championships, but they're not the flashy guy that pulls up in the Lambo, with the Versace glasses on. That's not them. You know who they are? They're the guy in cowboy boots with those old jeans and that old rustic cowboy hat that's in there drinking whiskey with one ice cube in it. And you know what? They don't need to win games with flash and sizzle. They need to turn it into a bar fight. This is the home of the 12th man. It's the home of the Junction Boys. These people meet at midnight to scream into the sky about their team. And that's how they need to go about it. So they're just under the radar, handling business. Connor Wegman, if he can stay healthy, is a problem. We know the type of athlete that A&M has. They just needed to get that culture fixed. And I think Mike Elko was the perfect remedy. So I expect them to beat Notre Dame week 1 right now. And I expect them to have a better year than what a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah, I mean, he plays Riley Leonard, his former quarterback, in week 1. Who knows him better? And, of course, Elko's a great defensive mind. He's going to figure that out. I also think Marcus Freeman, a little bit in over his head at Notre Dame. He did a nice job down the stretch last year, but, that's not a first job out of the gates. You're supposed to go to, Cincinnati for 4 years, then you get Notre Dame. You don't just get Notre Dame. So I think that will be interesting to watch. I'm with you, though. I like A&M. I love their offseason acquisitions. Let me give you the team that I've come back around on as underrated. I thought, for the record, I think Hugh Freeze should have went and got a transfer portal quarterback to at least
say it, Gordy. Say it to me.
But I think Auburn, we're not talking enough about them. I know the schedule is tough, but it's tough in this perspective. I think Mizzou takes a little bit of a step back from last year. I don't think they're as good. So a road trip at Mizzou isn't as scary. If Brock Vandagriff's not the real deal in year 1 at Kentucky, that road trip's not as scary. The road trip to Georgia is scary, don't get me wrong, but if you could survive Oklahoma at home, if you could survive Arkansas at home, and then the last 2 games home for A&M and then Alabama is tough, but I'm not picking Auburn to go 11-1 or anything, but I think 9-3 is doable if Peyton Thorne lives up to the hype. Again, Hugh Freeze's track record more than says this dude knows how to coach, he knows how to call plays. So I've come back around. I was down on Auburn earlier this offseason, but now I'm thinking they're maybe a little bit underrated.
Yeah, well, here's where I'm at with it, Gordy. Number one, I hope you are right. I hope you are right in spades. I was born in Auburn, Alabama, at East Alabama Medical Center. That's the first breath of air I ever took was Auburn air, Gordy. I was raised by the stadium. We moved 11 times in Auburn. My dad used to say if he knew where the silverware drawer was, it was time to move. Yes, I was raised by sickos. I think Auburn flipped their roster about as good as anybody, right, outside of the quarterback position. It's a true what I call move that bus situation. Like when they'd go renovate those old houses, they're like, move that bus. I feel like he did that with Auburn's roster up front. The offensive line added more depth. They got some key pieces. I think Connor Lew at center is going to be one of the best centers in the SEC. Defensive line-wise, a little worried about the interior and the size, but the depth that Auburn has now. Guys can go ahead and empty the tank of gas and not worry there's not a good player behind them. Secondary is a little bit questionable, but out wide, bringing in Lambert Smith, bringing in Robert Lewis, obviously bringing in Cam Coleman, and then having Rivaldo Fairweather, who I think is going to be a household name by the end of the year. I agree. Here's what it comes down to, though. Peyton Thorne does not have to be Batman. You do not have to be Batman. You just have to be a really good Robin. That's what you have to be. You have to make the right decisions in the RPO. You got to put the ball where guys can catch it. You have to take off when you need to take off and make good decisions. You can't stare at the rush. You can't pee down your leg. You can't freak out when you play teams that have athletes like this, which you shouldn't because you took a lot of high-quality snaps in the Big Ten. That's one of the things that shocked me the most. But it all starts with those first 5 games. Auburn's got the first 5 games at home. If Auburn can go 5-0, you're going to lose at Georgia and most likely Alabama. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm reverse jinxing it, but that's most likely. It's going to come down to, can you win at Missouri or at Kentucky? Because if you hold serve at home with those first 5, you beat Kentucky or Missouri on the road. I think 9-3 is very doable. In fact, Gordy, I'll go one step further. I think anything less than 8-4 would be a massive disappointment this year at Auburn.
Wow. Yeah, I think I agree with you. And that's, look, you make a great point on Peyton Thorne. And if we're going to compare it to performances last year, he doesn't have to be Jaden Daniels, but can he be Brady Cook? Can he do what Brady Cook did last year?
Just do good. You don't got to do incredible. Nobody's asking you to be Cam Newton. You just can't crash the car into the side of the wall like you did against A&M. Like, you just can't do that. Just don't. Whatever you did in that game, just do the opposite, and you'll be just fine.
All right, let's flip it, Jay. Give me a team this year in the SEC you think is a little bit overrated. I know Mark Schlabach did his post-spring top 25. I think he's got, Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Missouri, all them in the top 10. Who's a little bit overrated? Not saying they're going to be bad, but maybe not on a pathway for 12-0 that some people are thinking.
Texas. Not because Texas won't have a good football team. Not because I don't think Steve Sarkisian is a good coach. But here's what happens when you come into the SEC. And I know they beat Bama at Bama last year. And I think that might be a little bit of fool's gold going into this year, because I've tried to tell Oklahoma and Texas fans on Crain and Company, and some of them get it, some of them don't. And I understand both ends of it, right? Fan short for fanatical. I've tried to tell them, the trick about the SEC, or what makes the SEC hard, is not the one-off. It is not just, we beat Alabama, we're in good shape. We beat Oklahoma, we're in good shape. That was the Big 12, right? You win the one-off games, you can play bad and win the other ones if your team's good enough. In the SEC, it's like, oh my God, you guys, congrats, you just beat Georgia. Well, let's relax now. Oh, wait. Oh, God, no. We have to go to Tennessee. And then we get LSU at home. And then we got to go to Kentucky, who's probably pretty good too. It's the grind of it. It's you cannot take your eyes off the prize or think you can roll your helmet out there outside of Vanderbilt. Let's be honest. But the reason we have Vanderbilt here is so we can point at them and say, look, we care about school too. If we're going to be honest, that's why they're here. So I think Texas is going to beat Michigan on the road, right? But I think Texas is going to stumble in a few games because they're used to being able to go out there and say, you know what? Even if we have our C-plus game, our C-plus game is better than your B-plus game. And in this league, it is not.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And also, look, I like Sark a lot. I think he's a really good coach. But prior to last year, the win total wasn't great at Texas yet. He arrived last year, but you lose your whole receiving core. You lose Byron Murphy. You lose Tavondre Sweat. I just think there's a lot of holes to fill. They'll still be good, but I just don't know if they're the second best team in the SEC.
I'm more worried about the defense than the offense. I mean, if we're going to talk about the offense, look, they've got some really good players. But can Quinn Ewers stay healthy? That's the thing. He hadn't stayed healthy a whole year yet. And, buddy, I can promise you this. Going into the SEC is not the doctor's remedy for, hey, here, get healthy. Go into the SEC.
Well, Dallas Turner's gone too, so he can't knock him out of the game for the second, third straight year. I'll go. You know what? I'll go Bama a little bit. I think everybody's expecting a little bit of a transition from Saban to DeBoer, and I think we like DeBoer. I think he could be a good coach, but this schedule is pretty brutal for Alabama. To put it this way, Jake, I think Bama can be good, but still go 9-3 because the schedule's brutal. So it's one of those things. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but look. It's going to be must-see TV on a Monday on Feinbaum after they lose their first game. But, like, I think Bama is going to be good. I think they're going to be competitive. I think they'll be in every game, but I still think road trips at Tennessee and LSU, Nick Saban did that 2 years ago, lost both of them. So it's going to be tough because of the schedule.
Yeah, and look, just because Nick Saban's gone, we all know that Alabama still has really good players. Like Alabama's a very talented team. And I've continued to say, Gordy, and I think you agree with me on this, I think Kalen DeBoer's tenure is going to be defined by how he responds to when Alabama fans respond to the first time something inevitably goes wrong. Because in the past, it's like, man, like last year, for example, Texas beat us at home. We go down to USF and look terrible. Yes, we're upset, but it's Nick Saban. He's going to fix it. And they're right, because Nick Saban has built up all this equity. Well, what happens if you go to Wisconsin over there to Camp Randall in Madison? They start jumping around and something goes wrong. And then you got to play Georgia the next week and something goes wrong. I know that Kalen DeBoer has won a lot of games. Kalen DeBoer is a really good football coach. He's coaching it. He's the head coach of Alabama for a reason. But it's totally different when you don't have that equity built up with Alabama fans mixed with the anxiety of the greatest college football coach of all time and the one that resurrected them from basically the mid-level to get back to where Alabama fans feel like they rightfully should be. Are you going to see pitchforks and torches at the mayor's house in Tuscaloosa? You might, but how Kalen DeBoer, that's why Jalen Milroe is so important. And everybody keeps talking about his importance on the field. And yeah, that's right. Jalen Milroe is a really good player on the field, but he's a leader and has the locker room. So the first time something goes wrong, that's where Jalen Milroe's value is going to be worth its weight in gold to try and help get Coach DeBoer through that.
He is Jake Crain. We always love getting his take on sports, and we'll do it again here in a couple of weeks when we see him at SEC Media Days. For time being, Jake, let everybody know where they can find you.
Definitely, Gordy. Always love hopping on with you. It's really easy. You go to YouTube, you go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You type in Crain and Company, Crain and Company. We go live each weekday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Central. If you can't catch us live, it stays on there until the meteor hits us or the aliens decide they want to blow us up. And we have live call-ins and a live chat. We have a lot of fun. I'm the one in the middle that's right more than the other two.
Yeah, the good-looking one, right? That's
exactly right. The good-looking one that's always right.
He is Jake Crain. Jake, we'll do it again soon, man. Thanks for the time.
All right, Gordy. See you, buddy.
All right, more Locked On SEC right after this. Appreciate Jake Crain for joining us. Now I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. We've been telling you about this. If you've never signed up with them before, right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on whatever you want. Spreads, money lines, player props, and much more. You get that on a winning $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can get involved in the action. And once you're in there, they got great stuff to look at. It's not just nightly stuff with MLB and NBA and all this. You can also look ahead to the college football season. They got some early betting lines up already, some week one lines, some over-under win total props on the SEC. Whatever it is you want to do, FanDuel's got it there for you over at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's the website you want to go to. That's going to get you the special offer. Again, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. They are FanDuel, and they are America's number one sportsbook. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day long? You got to turn down the volume with all the shouting. We'll make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, program for you each and every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, we're going to get to a couple tidbits here before we call it a show. We head over to Missouri. As some big news yesterday is they added a significant player in the transfer portal, and that is ex-South Alabama linebacker Khalil Jacobs. He was one of the best players at his position in the Sun Belt last year. He also had offers from programs like Ole Miss, Auburn, and most notably Alabama. He was one of the most productive linebackers in the group of five, finished with 56 tackles, 8.5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, an interception, and 3 forced fumbles. Spent 2 years at South Alabama before entering the portal, and now he will join a Missouri team looking to build off of their 11-win season last year, hoping to make the playoff this year with expanding to 12 games. But Jacobs will be familiar with Missouri's system. Of course, he's following his former defensive coordinator, Corey Batoon, away from South Alabama, was hired away from South Alabama earlier this offseason to Mizzou. And so some familiarity there. Now, people thought maybe with Kane Womack, his head coach, going to Alabama to be their DC, that he would follow Coach Womack over there. But maybe more playing time opportunities at Mizzou than at Alabama. Very interesting. But follows his DC rather than his head coach, and he goes over to Missouri. And Jacobs is now the 15th transfer to commit to Mizzou this offseason. Tigers have the number 14 transfer class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. And a quick note on SEC baseball. If you missed it yesterday, SEC tournament rolling on in Hoover, and LSU, one of the hottest teams in college baseball right now. They were the 11th seed in the tournament, and they whipped up on Georgia on Tuesday, and then took it to 3-seed Kentucky on Wednesday, beating them 11-0 in a game that was shortened to 8 innings due to the run rule, conference's run rule. So LSU had 2 grand slams in Wednesday's game, one from Jared Jones and one from Tommy White. On the mound, former Alabama pitcher Luke Holman threw 6 scoreless innings without a hit, striking out 7. So LSU went from a few weeks ago being completely out of the postseason to winning, 4 of their last 5 series. They nearly came close to making it 5 straight if they had finished off that Friday night game at Alabama. But here they are, the hottest team in the SEC tournament, and they are rolling. The South Carolina Gamecocks, they beat Arkansas yesterday 6-5. So LSU will play South Carolina. Who had these 2 teams making it this far in the SEC tournament? Kind of some shocking upsets through the first few rounds of the SEC tournament. Now, as of this recording, Vandy was beating up on Tennessee, and Mississippi State A&M haven't played yet. But, yeah, it's been a good SEC tournament. Very enjoyable. All those games on Tuesday were really fun. That Ole Miss Mississippi State game went down to the wire. I mean, it was an incredible late inning, big 2-run homer for Mississippi State. So it's been quite fun watching these games. Hey, we've got good weather, knock on wood, but no rain to mess with everything in Hoover, and it normally does this time of year. So anyway, I've been enjoying watching the SEC baseball, and let's see who prevails and comes out of this thing. But going to keep watching. Been a lot of fun. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. Tomorrow on the show, we'll get you guys set for the weekend and get you caught up with all the latest tidbits going on around the SEC. And hey, for your second listen, like we told you, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel called Locked On Sports Today. Check it out on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.